Okay, so let's see our lecture 2 in this week, in the first week. And in this part that I'm going to start with the introduction of multimedia, right? So I gave you a general idea in the course information that what we mean, general perspectives and applications and why we do need to study the multimedia. But in this, lecture, I'm going to give you the real introduction to our course as multimedia. So to cover up the things and to understand the introduction to multimedia, we need to cover, these contents. So that is multimedia systems and applications. So after completion of this introduction to multimedia lectures, you will be able to understand what we mean by multimedia and what we mean by multimedia systems and what we mean by multimedia applications. And then we'll be understanding what are the characteristics of multimedia systems. Yeah, by the way, if you notice that, MM, it simply means multimedia. I mean, this is not a standard acronym, but MM that we mean that I will be trying to mean is multimedia, because every time to write multimedia takes some time. So we just shorten with this acronym MM in multimedia. Okay, we'll also be covering, challenges of multimedia systems. So if you know the characteristics of multimedia systems and what are the challenges that are associated with the multimedia systems, and then we'll be learning, what are the desirable features that we expect from multimedia systems. And after that, we'll be seeing that what are the components in a complete multimedia system. Okay, so these are the structural things to have a general idea on multimedia things. Now think that our course name is multimedia, but actually the true title of our course should be multimedia systems and applications. Okay, so this is our theory and application, multimedia theory and applications, because we'll be learning a lot of theoretical background that how the different systems in how the different elements of the multimedia system works. So that's why it should be multimedia theory and applications. Okay, so after learning this stuff, then we will be seeing that what are the research topics that is still we need to go through and we need to solve. What are the research issue and problems that I'll be trying to give you some idea, so that you can understand that right after finishing your undergraduate degree, that what are the scope in your graduate school, or what are the scopes in industry. So that's things I'll be trying to give you here. Okay, so let's start with the multimedia definition. What do you mean by multimedia? So there are many sorts of definitions that one can come up with, but I would first introduce the in multimedia what we mean in computer system perspectives. Okay, so and then we'll be giving an idea that what is meant by multimedia in general perspectives. So first, let's we understand that what you mean by multimedia, or the definition of multimedia in computer system perspectives. So as you see, the multimedia means that computer information can be represented through audio, video, and animation in addition to any other traditional media. So traditionally or conventionally, we understand that media means texting and some images and drawings, but audio, video, and animation itself, can be represented. So computer informations, whatever your computer information is, it can be represented through audio, video, animation, traditional media, whatever. So that's what we mean by multimedia in computer system perspectives. So you see, this is our let's say 101, this sort of data, right, information. But this information might be text, might be drawings, might be image, you know it might be audio, it might be video, and even it might be the animation. Okay, this is the animation. Let's say, of course, this is not blinking now because of this video software, but this is a GIF animation. So what is this? This one is actually your drawings or graphics, and this one is your image. You just take a image of a nature by your camera. So you know the what is the differences between a graphics and image. Image just you just take a photography by your optical instrument like camera, and you take a image of an object, right? It entirely mimics the object itself. But the graphics is basically your artificially drawing that you just by geometry or whatever you just draw. So that's called drawing or painting. So that is called graphics, right? But this is actually image. So this information can be text, this information can be this one, this information can be this one, so whatever. So the computer system perspective is that this computer it means this computer information can be represented through any of these aspects. So that's what we mean by multimedia in computer system perspectives. Now let's we think about that multimedia in more general perspectives. So multimedia is a field. I mean, when we talk about in general perspectives, this is multimedia is basically a field that concern with the computer controlled integration of text, graphics, drawings, still and movie images, animation, audio, or any other media where every type of information can be represented, stored, transmitted, and processed digitally. See, so this is seems a very wide definition, right? It's a very wide definition. So let's fragment it and divide it and then understand it. First of all, you see, we are talking about some sort of information, any type of information, whatever the type of, every type of information. But your information can be or should be represented digitally. So that means 1010 format. Your information should be stored or can be stored somewhere. For example, you see, this is stored somewhere, right? Your information you can represent and then you can store, and then you can transmit this information through some networks or through some devices, through some way. And then also you can process your information in digitally. So any type of information that you can represent, you can store, you can transmit, you can process digitally. So that basically might be your text, graphics, drawings, video, audio, whatever. And then you control, you integrate that all of this information by using a computer. So that means computer controlled information, the computer controlled information of these things, right? So that is we mean by multimedia general perspectives. That means you have the information, whatever your information is, that you can process, you can transmit, you can store digitally, and also you can integrate all of this information by using a computer. So that's why we're saying the computer controlled integration of any information. So that we mean by multimedia. Okay, now forget both the two definitions. What we mean by multimedia now, just multimedia means, it means the collections or integration of your text, graphics, drawings, image, or that is audio, video, animation, and whatever. And these collections of informations you can basically control by computer, or you can integrate all of this information in some specific manner by using a computer, and that's called the multimedia. I hope these definitions and these perspectives will help you. Now you understand what is multimedia. Okay, now let's understand what we mean by multimedia application. Okay, so multimedia application, multimedia, think about that. I'm not talking about the applications of multimedia. Applications of multimedia is used that you already know and we will also know again. But I'm talking about multimedia applications. It means simply a software, right? Or some product. So a multimedia application is basically an applications, app, or we can say simply app or application that uses a collections of multimedia source. So for example, multimedia means we know the text, graphics, audio, animation, video, and image. And now let's say, I mean, maybe you have a multimedia applications, that multimedia applications may be using only text and drawings. So definitely that you might have any kinds of application or any kind of software or any kinds of maybe Microsoft Word or something that in your applications they use just maybe text and drawing. So these text and drawings, this together, maybe this is the nature of this particular applications. So it might be many other things. So whenever you have multiple sources of media, multiple source of your this multimedia data, then your application, we can say that there is basically a multimedia application. Okay, so I think you understand what I mean. So now we come across some terminology. That terminology is useful and helpful to understand this subject. The first of all is the hypertext. You know what is hypertext? Perhaps you have noticed that that look about this kind of things, that when you see that, let's say this is you are reading some web page or something, and there these red things, these red stuffs, maybe that you can click this particular text, and this actually open up some new text, right? So hypertext basically a text which contains the links to other text, so that is called hypertext. Okay, you know these things. So this term basically was invented by Ted Nelson, that is in a very long back, 1965. He used these word, coined this word hypertext. So for examples, you can go from this page, maybe from this, maybe you are here, maybe you go from here to this page, maybe here to this page, or maybe here to this page, right? So you click a text and then it will navigate through other pages or other text, right? Other text. So that is text linked with other text, that is called hypertext. Okay. Now, how about that when we navigate the hypertext, we are going from, maybe you see that when you have a digital book, and if you click some one of the text, maybe it will take you maybe in page number 30, and again you click on the page number 30 in some text, maybe it will take you back to the page number 20 or something. So we can say the digital book itself is basically a non-linear traversing. So that means when you are going from one place to another, so this is not a sequential, it might be from any point to any point, so that's called non-linear traversing. Okay, but look about a book, simple normal text, you just read this line by line, line by line, and then you just turn in page, and then you go to the next page and next page, and then it is basically a linear traversing. So that means you basically traverse through this book, you basically move along this book linearly. But in hypertext, this is called a non-linear traversing. Okay, so that means what? That when we are talking about this non-linear traversing and non-linear navigations, we can say that means what? This, it is non-linear or linear. So these basically determine that what kind of organizations and layout it will be. That depends a lot on the application of hand, that it is a linear navigation or non-linear navigation. That's why we are just introducing this term hypertext navigation. So the hypertext, the text links with other text, that is called hypertext. And hyper text navigation is basically that how it looks like. Okay, now not only hypertext, so how about the hypermedia? Now what do you mean by hypermedia? So hypermedia is basically not just constrained, or not just uh, you know limit to the text base. Basically you can click in any media. For example, you just click a image, maybe it will provide you some another image, or maybe you just click an image, it will just open up a video, or maybe you just click some text and it will just take you to a YouTube video link. So that means so it is not only just text anymore, you can include in any other things. For example, look about here. So you just click maybe text, it can take you the graphics, you can click the graphics, it can take you the video, you can click the video, it can take you the sound. So this is called hypermedia. So that means media linked with another media, media is linked to another media, so that's called hypermedia. Okay, so hypermedia applications are huge, right? You see, our internet that we use every day, that is www, that is World Wide Web, is basically a very good example of hypermedia applications. You just go in Wikipedia, or maybe any other web page. There you can see lots of links, right? and some of the link is maybe text, some of the link you open it might be taking you to a video, some of the link might take you to the audio. So it's basically a great example and a nice example of hypermedia applications. Also think about the PowerPoint, right? When you prepare a PowerPoint slides, maybe you click some text, maybe it it takes you some video or audio or whatever, so or text, right? So that is also hypermedia applications. So that means Microsoft PowerPoint has hypermedia scope. Also, how about the Acrobat, Adobe Acrobat, or any other PDF software, maybe Foxit Reader or whatever. So that is basically also a hypermedia applications, right? Because in PDF documents, if you link one link, maybe it will take to some video. So one media linked to another media, so that's hypermedia. So in that sense, Adobe Acrobat is also hypermedia. Adobe Flash, the Adobe Flash is used in manywhere, right? Even in browser, web browser, Google Chrome or any other kind of browser, you know, uh, they give you lots of utilities. So that is also basically hypermedia applications, right? So great examples of multimedia applications. Now, many others hypermedia applications. Maybe you can also, come up with some name. You can try that. What are the hypermedia applications? You can come up with some own name. Okay. Okay. Now, what are the multimedia applications that I told you in the beginning, in the first part of our this week lectures or lecture one? So, World Wide Web, basically multimedia applications. Also, multimedia authoring. What is multimedia authoring? Author, what does it mean? Author means writer, right? Writer. So multimedia authoring means there are many multimedia software, multimedia tools where you can basically produce another multimedia product, multimedia stuff. So that is called multimedia authoring. So that means your multimedia software can produce another multimedia stuff or out. I will be talking a little more on this multimedia authoring little later. So but Adobe Director or the formerly Metromedia Director is basically your multimedia authoring tools. So that means with these tools you can basically generate another kind of multimedia application. Hypermedia courseware. Hypermedia courseware. Have you heard of the open courseware, MIT open courseware, or maybe IIT open courseware, or any education open MOOCs? So that things, you go in any big Stanford University, MIT, or even Sejong University, they have some open course, right? So these open course, basically when you open it, basically all are multimedia applications. So that's basically hypermedia open courseware. So education, in education world, for example Coursera or many other kinds of online education platforms. So this is basically multimedia applications are inevitable, very well organized, right? Okay. And even the lectures that I'm giving to you through some software that I'm producing this lecture by using some software. So that is called Everlex software. Basically, you see this one is recording. So this is basically Everlex software. This Everlex software itself basically a multimedia authoring tools. Okay. So these are really some of the very specific applications of multimedia. Okay. Now, how about the video on demand? Yeah. So you just wanna, watch some specific video, any specific drama or a specific movie. You go to the Netflix and then just you pay some money and then you are watching some specific, Netflix video or movies, right? So that's basically called video on demand. So video on demand. So Netflix is basically a wide examples of multimedia applications, right? Now, how about the interactive TV? There is a television, service that you can interact, that you can select something, and then based on that, they can, play those kind of, program. Or maybe two screen, you have the enhanced television that in one screen you have computer and in another screen you have television. That's called interactive TV, right? So that is also a great examples of multimedia applications. And definitely, as I explained, the computer games are a very true world of multimedia applications. virtual reality is basically another big world of multimedia applications. Virtual reality, right? So how about the digital video editing production system, for example, director suite? So that is also a great examples of multimedia applications. And then you might have multimedia database systems. So these are some very specific and very powerful and very popular, examples of multimedia applications. And look about these things up with an, think about a computer games company, or let's say video on demand Netflix company. So they need lots of software programmer, lots of software developer, lots of computer scientists, lots of electrical engineers to do these sorts of stuff. So you see that these multimedia course will be helpful, for you to be equipped with work in any kinds of company that you want. You go in Naver, you Dom, in Kako, Facebook, Google, everywhere you need the knowledge of multimedia. So because the applications of multimedia is endless. Okay, so I told you that about this, multimedia authoring. So let's we go here. So first of all, what do you mean by multimedia authoring? As I told you, that you can create some multimedia productions. So creation or making some multimedia production is called multimedia authoring. Also, sometimes we say movies and presentations, right? So that means you have some sequence of multimedia things, a sequence of your audio, video, text, graphics, or in some specific order you need to. So that kind of sequence or series of multimedia contents itself, so we can say this is basically a movie or basically presentations. Or how we can come up with that kind of a series of multimedia contents or productions, that basically we come up with multimedia authoring tools or multimedia authoring system, right? The multimedia authoring system basically a program, right? So program, most of the peoples of us, we are basically not programmer, right? So what we need to do, you as a program, you are the programmer, so you will be creating a software, or we can say an authoring systems. Then other people, the commercial people, they don't know how to write this program, they can use your program, and after using your program they can come up with some multimedia product. So that is called authoring system. For example, Adobe Director, Adobe Photoshop, so this is, or Microsoft PowerPoint. So some programmer has made Adobe Director, or maybe there is another, Camtasia. So Camtasia is basically, you can create in using Camtasia, one can create video tutorials and presentation directly by screencasting, right? Just through the screen recording, and you can actually come up with all these multimedia things. So that is this Camtasia software itself, we can say this is basically a multimedia authoring system. So that means what, the programmer, he will create this kind of multimedia authoring systems, and general people, they who are not programmer, they will just learn how to use these tools, and then they can come up with some a very fancy production, right? So that means this, for example, in Adobe Director, look about this sort of this sort of tools. So you can use, one can use these tools, and they can just, if you know how to utilize those tools, then he just can come up with a production. So that means a non-programmer who is not a programmer can easily create a software with programming features, right? So that is the authoring system. So in a nutshell, in a multimedia authoring systems, you will have the options to utilize graphics, interactions, and various kinds of other tools. So usually authoring systems is basically interactive. You just take this one, that one, this one, that one. You just, the user can interact with your system, and then utilizing all of the bounds of the stops and programming features, then they can come up with some kind of specific product. For example, video editing, software editing, or many any simple course material preparation. Okay, so now let's talk about that, what we mean by multimedia system. We understand what we mean in multimedia, we know multimedia applications, we know what we mean by hypertext, we know what we mean by hypermedia. Now we are talking about what we mean by multimedia system. It's very simple. A multimedia system is a system which is capable of processing multimedia data and applications, right? We are now familiar with multimedia data. Multimedia data is text, audio, video, and what is multimedia applications? Maybe Microsoft PowerPoint is a multimedia applications. So what is the system? The multimedia system is a system that can that can process the multimedia data and applications both. For example, computer itself is a multimedia system, because computer can deal this Microsoft PowerPoint. Computer operating You have a computer operating system, and the computer, it basically can process, can execute your multimedia data as well as multimedia applications. For example, if you have a sound data, audio data, and if you have some audio video software, and if you have a computer, then your computer can basically run both this data through these applications. So that's a computer system itself is basically a multimedia system. Okay, so multimedia system then characterize how we understand that what is the system features or system specifications. So we need to know that what is the system's processing power, what is their storage capacity, what is the generation capacity, manipulation capacity, or the performance of multimedia information, that is called rendition means performance. Okay, performance. So multimedia system basically characterizes by these sort of things, that what are the if you have a multimedia system and if I have a multimedia systems, maybe we can compare these two multimedia systems, that we'll be comparing what is the processing power, what is the storage, what is the generation capabilities, what is the manipulation or processing capabilities, this kind of stuff. So now you know what we mean by multimedia system. Okay, so what are the characteristics of a multimedia systems? So the characteristics of features, right? So characteristics of multimedia system, basically there are four basic characteristics. The main characteristics is the multimedia system must be computer controlled. So that means the central of multimedia systems is basically computer. So computer controlled systems, right? And multimedia systems are integrated. Yes, integrated, because you are dealing with audio, text, video, animation, graphics, drawings. So you need to have some mechanism to integrate all of this by using computer. So this multimedia system should be integrated. So one word is integration, and then another is computer control. And then you have the every information, it must be represented digitally. I mean, we are not dealing with the analog systems, we are just focusing on the digital system. So information must be represented digitally. So now it is done. After that, the final interface of your multimedia system should be interactive, user interactive, right? So there is a user, and that user gives some command, or gives some input, and then he gets some output. So that is called interactive system. So that's why in any final presentation of any media, this interface should be interactive. Okay, so these are the four basic characteristics of a multimedia systems. Okay, now let's understand what are the challenges of multimedia systems. The very first challenge is that when we talk about the multimedia, we are basically we are not generating multimedia data in our computer. We need to transmit the multimedia, right? For example, if you have a mobile and you are downloading some software, you have some music and some kind of drama, and you are seeing some Netflix video. So whatever you are doing, so there those data, those drama, those movie coming from maybe some cloud server, and that cloud server is basically controlled by some other systems. So your computer is in a remote location, some other mobile is in remote location, and cloud in some other where. So the whole networks itself basically distributed, right? It is not in one place. The whole system is basically distributed. So, or we say it's a multimedia system must deal with distributed networks. And when something is distributed, not just centralized in one place, definitely that's a challenge, that how we can manage the entire distributed network. Maybe from you are just watching a movie, but that maybe coming from Singapore, and maybe from Philippines, that maybe server is in Philippines, right? So it's so that the characteristics of that network is really very important to give a proper service. Okay, Now you forget about the networks. Now think about the multimedia data itself. So there is a temporal relationship between data. What do you mean by temporal relationship between data? It means, let's say, you have an audio, you have a video, you have a text, right? So every information that let's at a very particular time, it should be coming maybe at the same time or maybe at some specific time. So that means that your system, your multimedia system, should provide all the required data at the same time, and that supply should be continuous. There should not be any interruptions or problem or jittering. So that is really a challenge to maintain this temporal relationship between the data, right? Also think about that when you watch a video, maybe video has lots of frame by frame. We will understand that things frame by frame, and that each frame should be coming up with some in a sequence, in a specific sequence. So playing frames in a correct order or sequence in the correct order is also a challenge. So this is basically temporal relationship. Temporal mean time, so basically the sequence coming one after another, so that is also kind of time relationship. Okay. Also, another great challenge is intermediate scheduling. What does it mean? It will, for example, let's say video and audio, right? Let's say you have a video, and definitely someone is talking. So they the lip synchronization, so that means there should be a very well synchronization between an audio and video. So if audio and video doesn't match at the same times, then the entire things will be very boring and very headache, right? We can't watch those kind of out of synchronization media. So maintaining synchronization is basically a great challenge. So distributed networks is a challenge. Maintaining temporal relationship between data is also a great challenge. Okay. Now, then what is the what are the key issues in multimedia systems based on the characteristics or challenges that we saw the challenges, we saw the characteristics. Based on these characteristics and challenges, what are the key issues for multimedia systems? The key issues for multimedia systems is how we can represent and store temporal information. That means the time information, so that every data can be played at the same times or when it is required. And also how we can strictly maintain the temporal relationships, right? The playback or retrieval, right? So those are very how we can maintain the sequence or the relationship between the data or any other media. And to do this kind of stuffs, what are the different kind of process involved? So that is also the key issues in multimedia. Also, our data, I told you that it should be digital. Now when it should be digital, that you need to convert your data from analog to digital. So when you convert the data from analog to digital, then there comes the sampling. So we'll be learning how we can do analog to digital conversion, and how what is the sampling and how we do the sampling. These things will be learning at a later slides or later lectures, right? So also think about the another key requirements is that multimedia data is usually very large. So that means if you have a very large data, very huge data, so definitely you need a huge communication bandwidth to transmit and to receive your data, or to communicate your data. Also you need huge storage, hardware capacities should be very huge, right? So to maintain these things, definitely you need to compress this data. So data compression definitely is always mandatory in addition to these key issues. So the key issues or central issues in multimedia systems is therefore that how to represent and store temporal information, how we can maintain the sequence, and what are the process to do so, how we can do analog and digital conversion and sampling stuff, and how we can maintain the compression so that we can take less bandwidth and less storage. Okay. So then what are the okay, so based on our understanding, now we know what we mean by multimedia and what we mean by multimedia system and what are the multimedia applications. Now all together, now what is our expectation from a good multimedia system? Or we can say, what are the desirable features, of a multimedia systems? Definitely, when you desire, we expect a lot, right? So multimedia systems, should be, you know, should have very high processing power, because it needs to deal with large data processing and real-time delivery of media, right? You need to deliver real-time data, and it needs, a special hardware, special hardware. So I'll be talking special hardware a little later. Also, the multimedia, capable file systems, right? So for example, sometimes we really need to deliver real-time media, so we need video and audio streaming, right? Video audio streaming. And to handle this video audio streaming, you need different kinds of file system, not just usual file system for documents. We need a very specific file system. Specific coding and decoding are associated there. You might need a very special hardware or software. For example, you might need, RAID technology. You know what is RAID technology? Redundant array of independent disks. So that a very fast, and a huge processing can be done, when you have the redundant array of independent disks, so that if failures or something happen, so many kinds of things we can recover. So whatever, so the special hardware might be a desirable features. Also, if we talk about the data representations, the file formats that support multimedia, should be very easy to handle, right? So different kinds of file formats. So look, one is the file system and one is the file format. When you talk about the file systems, it's basically related to the system, but when you talk about the file formats, it's basically the data types, right? So it should be very easy to handle, and so that we can easily compress and decompress in real time. So we'll be seeing that, there are, some formats and representations of the data that we can easily do compression and decompression, and for other kinds of format we can't. So file formats should support, multimedia should be easy to handle, and yet it is suitable for compression and decompression for data in real time. Okay. And then when you should have, the multimedia system should have very efficient and very high performance input output, IO, or we can say IO devices, right? For example, that, I input and output to the file subsystem needs to be very efficient and very fast. And also when you have the real-time recording and playback, so definitely, you might need, directly, you might need to directly recording on the disk, or hardware, right? We don't need to, first load in the memory and then from the memory to transfer this one, no. So that means whatever the, input output systems you have, so those input output, IO, we can say peripheral devices, that from CPU to any other input and output systems, input output, so that should be very efficient. Also, we might need a very special operating systems to handle this efficient IO, to handle your some other kind of special hardware systems, other kind of very high processing power systems. Maybe your operating system should be also very special. That is, so that the file system and data processing should be very efficient and very quick. Okay. Also, your operating systems will support, direct transfer to the disk, also real-time scheduling. This, I mean, this is basically operating system terminology, you don't need to understand now. Also maybe, very input output streaming, fast interrupt processing. So these are, some of the, desirable features. And another desirable features is that we need large storage requirement. Okay, maybe lots of hardware and lots of RAM and those kind of things. So that's why whenever you do, video editing, or those kind of stuffs, we really need, if you really handle multimedia stuffs, Adobe and those kind of things, you need a very good computer systems which has very large, storage capacity and large memory. That means RAM. This is the RAM, right? And this one means your hard drive. Also, because, the distributed networks, so client server systems, are very common in a distributed system, so you should have network support. Also, you will have a lot of software tools you will use to produce and to handle your multimedia applications and systems. So definitely those software tools should be very user friendly, so that the user friendly tools, that we can handle easily the media, we can design and develop applications, and then we can deliver the respective media. So these are some, desirable features that we expect from a multimedia systems. Now, if we wrap up, that high processing power, some specific file systems, special hardware, data representation should be easy, and the I/O operation should be, very efficient. You might need a special operating system, and your storage and memory should be high. You should have network support. Your software tools should be very user friendly. Those are some desirable features. Now you see, when we really expect a lot and very ideal, right? But of course, those things are not ideal in real, in practical. So what are the components of a multimedia system? you know the components is, you need various kinds of, first of all, whenever you talk about the multimedia, systems, maybe you need the capture device, the first input devices. You might have video camera or video recorder, you might have audio microphone, keyboards, graphics tablets, 3D input devices, maybe tactile sensor, virtual reality devices, digitizing hardware, right? Different kinds of, capturing devices you need. Basically, this is capturing devices, the very first, category of the devices or components in a multimedia systems, right? So think about that. When you capture the data, so that is the very first requirement. So to have the multimedia data, maybe you need 3D graphics tablet, or maybe you need some tactile sensor. You know what is tactile sensor? If you think about the robot hand, the robot hand, when he holds some object, he need to understand that what kind of, object it is, and then accordingly it can give us some specific pressure. For example, if he holds a ball like this, and if he gives a pressure like a stone, then maybe it would be crashed. So to understand that how much pressure this robotic hand should put on this object, this is also matter. So that can be understood by this kind of, tactile sensor. We say that is tactile sensor. Also, we might need, three-dimensional mouse. If you just, play this audio, if you just search for Space Mouse Pro or 3D connection Space Mouse Pro, then you will see that, these things, how it is, this looks like. That, for example, let's say I, maybe if I can play this movie just for a seconds, then you will understand what we mean by three-dimensional mouse. For example, there is an object and you wanted to rotate this object. Just you can, move this mouse, and then you can just rotate this object three dimension, in a kind of, for example, let's look at these things, then you will understand it. See, see.
So my name is Uwe Röchkemmer. I'm sales director for 3D Connection for the German-speaking region. And I want to present you our brand new device, the Space Mouse Pro. And it's the same advantages with your CAD software, like working in real life.
So that means you just, just use this one, and you can actually, rotate and move this one three-dimensional.
The knife, the tool in your right hand. And working with our devices with the CAD software, with the 3D CAD software, is exactly the same. Yeah? You have the object you want to rotate, you have in your right hand.
You see?
So first of all, it's all about navigating in the 3D space. Yeah? Instead of clicking any command,
so that's why it says Space Mouse Pro. We don't need to click, rather you just
take
move
the navigation cap in your hand. And
yeah, you see?
Move it. Behind this,
there is a navigation, button, and just, it is happening, right?
So you can move the object.
Okay, you can watch it, in YouTube, but I'm not, showing the full, because this is not my video. I just, took it from, YouTube link. Okay. And then you need, storage devices, right? Different kind of storage, because when you have the data, then you need hard disk, CD-ROM, DVD-ROM, so those things. Okay, you need, components of a multimedia system is the network itself, communication network. So you might be local networks, it might be internet, and then some other kind of special high speed networks. And then you need different kinds of computer systems. For example, you need some multimedia desktop machines or workstations, or you might need an mpeg or video or dsp hardware. So that is basically computer systems, right? And also you need some display devices. For example, cd quality speaker, hdtv, that is high definition television, or maybe super vga, that is super video graphics adapter card, high resolution monitors, color printers. This is also the display devices for multimedia systems. So that's basically constitute the components. So component, basically you have the input, you have the networks, you have the storage, and then you have the networks, and then you have the output devices, and you have the systems itself. Okay, so there are various kinds of multimedia software tools that you might be interested in and you are familiar. For example, music sequencing and notation. When they who they who are the composer, they basically deal with handle lots of musical sequencing instruments. For example, Cubase software. So Cubase software basically used for music sequencing. You need to maybe deal with the digital audio. Then you have Adobe Audition. You have the image editing and graphics editing software, for example, Adobe Photoshop. You have video editing software, for example, Final Cut Pro. You have the animation software, for example, multimedia APIs, for example, Java 3D and OpenGL. So these are different kind of software tools. And I told you Adobe Flash. Okay, so these are the things. Now you understand what are the challenges, what are the desirable features, what are the characteristics, what we mean by multimedia, what are the multimedia systems, application, what are the components, various kinds of things, right? But those things is good. In the present day, what we have really great, but still we need a lot of things in future. So that's why the research topics in multimedia are really very endless. So the research topics, maybe someone might do research on multimedia content analysis, or content based multimedia retrieval, or multimedia security, or compression algorithms, or maybe audio, image and video processings. Also someone might works on multimedia networking stuffs, for example, network protocols, and quality of service and databases. Also maybe someone might be interested to develop hypermedia systems or user interface, that is ui, or some authoring systems itself. Or maybe also maybe multi-dimensional or multimodal interactions of multimedia also someone might be interested in. So the research is also that nowadays is web service everywhere, right? So wherever your devices is, the web everywhere devices, also multimedia education including computer supported collaborative learning. So these days, education, we are people, we are in many places, right? Maybe someone is in korea, someone is in america, someone is in india, and someone is in bangladesh. And but they might go through a collaborative approach to learning and education. So that's also a multimedia stuff. So how to design those things, and how to have the virtual environment applications, these are also the multimedia research topics. So multimedia is really very useful, both for your career and to advance our civilization, to advance our well-being, to advance our comfort. We really need multimedia every day, right? So these are the things. And lecture 2 in the first week. So in the next week I'll be coming up with graphics and data representations or something. So see you in the next week. And please, you just I'll be giving you some little bit homework or practice assignment. You just please complete that practice assignment at home right after taking these lectures, and then you can do, and you will see a deadline. Please submit that before the deadline. And yeah, so please, you study, and you see this is a very interesting subject. I hope you will enjoy it. Okay, see you in the next week.